Hello there, beetle lovers. I promised to translate this introduction to a series of videos about the stag beetle also into English, and that's what I'm doing now. In the next half hour I go through all of the 29 videos that I produced in the following of the research project about the life cycle of the European stag beetle, and explain a little bit what you can see in what number of videos. I have to say just before that the quality of the videos, the first around 20, are not very well, but if you're really into loving the beetles and want to know how to rear them, I think they are, even though quite instructive. So the project originally started in 2012 when I received a phone call from a man that lived in a little village in the vicinity of Frankfurt in Germany, and he said that a lot of females of the European Stag Beetle Lucanus cervus come to his little hut in a forest in Obermörlen, and he wondered whether he can help them reproduce there. And I said, yes, I can bring you a box with the substrate so you can put the females in there, but because mostly they are already fertilized, and then you can see whether they produce offspring and can care a little bit for them, because I realized that he really loved these beetles, so I wanted to encourage him to start rearing them, and that's what we did. And I took a part afterwards, half an hour later in 2013, I brought 2 or 3 of the boxes that I prepared for him to Switzerland, and I decided to make a project about a life cycle, because there were a lot of questions already then about the data that we had in the literature about the life cycle of the stag beetle. This is one of the famous little books written about the stag beetle Lucanus cervus in German from Bernhard Klaus Nitzer. It first was published, I think, around 1970s, and this was a version from 1982. And in fact, this is one of the books that started also the interest for other beetles, not only for stag beetles. As you can see here, a lot of exotic beetles are also presented here, like the Dorcus species that are very famous now, like some of the other, like here a stag beetle, Hiasognathus granti, and also some exotic beetles are found already here, like for example Adolphine from New Zealand. And yes, it's a very interesting book, and it could be kind of a kick-off book for people who like to breed and rear beetles. But there were no informations inside here about the rearing and breeding, because these people were interested taxonomically about the Coleopteros, not about rearing and breeding them. So that was something that the scientific literature didn't reflect, that you can easily breed them if you know how to do it. And so on. I said, let's just check how long really a stag beetle larva takes to come from egg to adult, because in this book it was originally written it should take 5 to 8 years for larva, and everybody that was into breeding and rearing beetles knew that is impossible, because we don't know any stag beetle that takes 5 or 8 years for the development. So it was just a little research project about to check what was written in the literature. So it started when I first received these boxes from Germany. I also stored them in a cellar with this is the first video from January 2013, where I checked one of the boxes. Now the first box with the larvas from Obermörlen, and I wanted to see how many offsprings the females from Obermörlen created there already. Also in the same year, 2012, I started a breeding project with a local species of Lucanus cervus from around Paris. You see here, there are beautiful larvae in the substrate mixture of white rotten wood and flake soil. So it was already approved that this kind of substrate in the box was very good to help the females of the stag beetle to lay eggs. And you see how many offspring she created. In the book of Klausnitzer it was written that around between 30 and 100 eggs can be laid by a female of the stag beetle. We know now that it's of course more than 30, it's about 50, 60 to 100 an average for a stag beetle female, depending of course on the size of the female. The larvae were already 8 grams there, and breeding went on. The same video, second video from 2013, you see that I kept the larvae in 500 milliliter boxes, not only, but I wanted to check also how many substrate one larva needs for the development. That's also an important question for us and for all the projects for the reintroduction of the stag beetle in places where they have been lost due to habitat destruction. The box is made with flake soil and also with a material with the mushroom mycelium, like here Pleurotus pulmonarius. I experimented with mushroom breeding already a long time, and I created these kimchi bottles that you can see here in the PET bottles that became afterwards famous in the beetle breeding scene as a replacement for white rotten wood. Now that's an interesting thing to replace a material where you never know how it's really made of in nature. When you see a block of wood somewhere lying on the ground that seems to be good, you never know what kind of wood it is or what kind of mushroom is in there. And if you want to have a standardized substrate for the rearing of your beetles, it's important to know what kind of wood and what kind of mushroom mycelium is in there. So that's why I developed at that time this kimchi bottles mixture that I published also in YouTube. You can see here in the channel, beetle breeding channel, also videos about how to make these kimchi bottles and also the flake soil mixture. So this was also a big mystery that was made around what is really flake soil and how can you do it. And I developed a very simple recipe for the production of flake soil around 2010. That was around 2 years before these videos are made. And I used flake soil also for rearing of stag beetles. This is the part 3 now from January 2013, where you see that I take one of these kimchi bottles. On the top, this white mass is the mycelium of the mushroom, and this I cut off because it contains too much nutrition here. And what we need for the stag beetles is not the mushrooms, but is the wooden material, the mixture of sawdust with the mycelium of the mushroom inside. So that's really a copy of natural white rotten wood that you can see here. And then you make just a hole or let it in, put it in a box, and the larvae can find them when they want to eat. And it was also a way to test whether you can feed stag beetles with these kimchi bottles in a substrate mixture with this flake soil material that you can see here, that consists mostly of beech wood and bran, fermented around 1 or 2 months. So it went on with the test. Part 4 was also in January 2014. Next boxes were checked now. You see there are big pieces of white rotten wood blocks in there. So of course that animates the females to lay their eggs, and you can see here plenty of nice larvae of Lucanus cervus, the biggest beetle in Europe, and it's a flagship species. It's a The beetle in Europe, yes, because it's the the biggest, and everybody knows, and it's culturally very known. It's introduced in mythology and whatever. Now this is already February 2013 here. Also, it's a next box that I checked. As you can see, I started with big boxes for the egg laying, and then I separated the larvae into smaller containers and wanted to check what kind of containers are ideal. Like, for example, these big glass jars with a mixture of kimchi and flake soil, or if it's better to keep them in a even bigger plastic box, like you can see here. And it is, all the data have been collected. I will publish all the data in my next book in a separate chapter. It's the book Food from Wood, and the chapter will be about the life cycle of the stag beetle. So that I collected at this time in these 3 years. Here's a white rotten wood that I cut into pieces. I put a little piece into each box for each of the larvae to feed them well, and to see whether you can produce a stag beetle also in these small 500 milliliter boxes. That's half a liter. That's not much, and I wanted to know whether you can rear them here. Of course, in the development time of a larva, you should probably 2 or 3 times change the substrate. One of the advantages of these small boxes is, of course, that there are no earthworms in the substrate. That's a real danger. We will come back to that a little bit later in the list of the videos. You see, the quality of the videos is not that good, but it was meant as a documentation at that time for the research project, and I didn't want it actually to publish them. But now I thought, yeah, let's do it anyway, because I think there are a lot of people who love it. A big larva on a block of flake soil, a little bit compacted. They like compacted material, the larvae. They like to dig into the material. 13 gram for a larva. That's pretty good for a stag beetle, and of course this will be a male later, because the females rarely get over 10 grams, but the males can be up to 20, and that's one of the beautiful one. And also you can check the gender sex by looking at the third last segment of the body, if you can see the ovaries. Next playlist, part number 9, is from August. That's exactly 1 year after we started the project, because actually the egg laying was around August 2012, and now you already see really big larvae around here, also in these big jars. But at the end it was also shown that big jars are not really needed. It's not needed to have a jar with 5 liters of substrate for one larva. This is a female. You see orange, yellowish ovaries, third last segment of the body. You can see that very easily. Yeah, next part is 6th August 2013, exactly 1 year after we estimate the egg laying of all of these. And this was a very, very big surprise. I've seen the first pupal chamber. That was only 1 year after they were eggs. They were already on their way to being adults. Can this really be true? We will check it now. 19th August 2013. This was a small box. You can see this 500 milliliter box with one larva from bear sheath from around the place where I live in Switzerland. And this was a fantastic day when I found the first female of a stag beetle. After 1 year it eclosed from the egg. That's really fast. 1 year after it was an egg, it's already an adult. And that's not too small, 3.5 centimeters. That's pretty big. So it was already shown at that time. It's not true. 5 to 8 years. That's way not true. But that it can be after 1 year already. That was astonishing for me too. Here you see very, very big larvae at the same time. These didn't prepare for pupation. Now they stayed 1 year more. So you can follow the whole list of the project here, 5th January 14. So this is what after 1.5 years after they were they were born. And what you can see here, it's another nice female that's already here. More than half of the whole population of these stag beetle larvae is close to adults after 1.5 years. That was an astonishing result for me too. And you cannot say that I keep them in another temperature like in natural conditions. I kept them in a cellar where the temperatures are practically the same as outdoors. So yes, here you see the preparation of the breeding container, checking weight every time, making lists, writing everything. This was a lot of work that I did, and as I said already, I will publish the data in my next book. Here you see a little male from Berschitz from Switzerland. It could be that this is just a subspecies that is not that big. It has another form of mandibles and the head is not that wide. So, but they are very nice stag beetles also, and of course a little bit smaller than the ones from Frankfurt, where they have a beautiful and big oak forest to live in. So, checking boxes every day, looking for the pupal chambers here. So something must be in there. Let's see whether it's already developed or not, and then you can open it. This is always a very, very interesting moment to see what you can find in there. So it's another female that looks out here of the small pupal chamber. And it's also shown that in these 500 milliliter containers, that's more than enough for a larva of the size of a stag beetle that can be up to 20 grams. That's more than enough. And the most interesting thing is part 16 from May 2014. As you see, I'm writing new etiquette. We are already preparing for new pairs, because a lot of these stag beetles have already closed and are adults, and now I group them into pairs for the mating, so that probably 1 month later I can take the females for egg laying. Always feed them well, because they have to drink some water, but they drink it from mostly rotten fruits or the sap of trees, so this is a good form. Also, with watermelons I made no negative experiences, while other people say it's dangerous for the beetle. So there are a lot of things are said and not tested, so it's good to make some research. Next box, you can see here a big pupal chamber on the side of the plastic box. We are already in number 17, and then you can see here's one of the other nice stag beetles. They are big, and you think, yeah, they're too big that they have placed in this 500 milliliter box. That's not true. That's enough space for them. So, from video 18 we have a little bit better quality. Why? Because I started then to build a new YouTube studio, because it was really nice to see that a lot of people were interested to see videos about stag beetle rearing and breeding, and I said let's make share the joy with others around the world, and let's make some beautiful videos with a little bit better macro LED and nice light around, so that you can actually see what you have to do when you want to rear and breed and keep nice beetles like Lucanus, cervus. And also this gives you the possibility to have an insight into things that you've never seen before, like for example here. So that's a big living pupa of the European Stag Beetle Lucanus, cervus. That's really something you never see also in nature. You hardly will find a pupal chamber of a stag beetle because it's very, very carefully dig into some piece of wood or whatever. So now we are already part 19. So this is now the time to speak about the book that I presented to you already from Clausnitzer. And here I explain a little bit that most of the projects with the stag beetles, they just take the information of Clausnitzer as a fact. So mostly if you read about stag beetles from the last century, you will read that they take 5 to 8 years for the development and they produce 30 to 100 offsprings. And every scientist just copied these data without thinking that possibly it is not true. And now it comes to us, the citizen-sized people, to show that it's really not true. And we have to correct the scientific data about the life cycle of Lucanus cervus. Here you see new X and L one-stage larvas. Yeah, from here it is I think a joy to look, to watch the videos because the quality is a little bit better and you see more details in the way you can manage rearing process for nice stag beetles. A lot of stag beetles in the tropics, they develop similarly, and also the famous stag beetles from Japan or wherever you know that there are a lot of people who are interested in breeding stag beetles. The method is pretty much the same. And what is also the same is a little bit the big dangers of the rearing process. We will talk about this a little bit later. That's another beautiful small male from Burgess from Switzerland. Yeah, the Swiss are a little bit in the mountains, you know, they are not that big. So, number 22, I think this is a male from, here you see now the danger of the breeding. If you keep the larvae in big boxes for a long time without changing the substrate, you will have a big problem with earthworms. And then they are a deadly danger, not for the larvae and not for the adults, but for the pupas, because the earthworms make the pupal chamber collapse, and in the collapsed chamber the pupas cannot survive. They will die, and then they will be, the dead bodies will be eaten by earthworms or other insects. So you have to be very careful about the substrate that you use. If you go to the forest, collect some leaves and white rotten wood, that's not a problem. The larvae will eat them, but you will always end up having a lot of earthworms in a substrate over the time. So there are two solutions. One is the more difficult solution, to see whether you can collect material without earthworms. That's practically impossible if you go out to the nature for collection. You have to prepare the substrate. You can cool them in the refrigerator for -20 degrees. That's one possibility, but it's not practically for everybody of us. And the second solution is that at the end of the larval phase, you take the big larvae and separate them into smaller boxes where they can produce their pupal chambers without the presence of earthworms. And that's actually what I suggest that you should do if you cannot guarantee that there are no earthworms in the substrate. Because if you have a substrate without earthworms, you can also keep 10 larvae in one bigger box, and they will be able to pupate there and produce offspring. So that's the picture about this beautiful big stag beetle from Frankfurt. It's the 8 centimeter species with the earthworms. So this adult is really lucky that it was not destroyed in the pupal phase by the earthworms in this loamy substrate where it was living. So they can live in very complicated conditions in the form of the larva, but not in the form of the pupa. These are nice two pairs of stag beetles freshly emerged. That's a beautiful sight of the most beautiful and the biggest coleoptera in Europe. So that's a really famous and protected species. But the larvae, mostly they are killed if they are found because people think they are pests for the plants or whatever, or they don't know how to say whether it's a stag beetle larva or a larva of another insect that lives in the soil. There are a lot of this type of larvae that live in soily material, so you will find some of them also in your garden. But if they are big, more than 5 grams, you can be sure it's a stag beetle larva. Two more males here in the video number 23. So that's about how to prepare a rearing box in another method with some wood pellets of beech with some white rotten oak wood pieces and with some earth. Of course, also here you have to see whether it's really clean and without any earthworms. That is a little bit difficult. Also, if you use the compost of your garden or whatever, that is possible, but it's a big danger that there are too many worms in it. And it takes some flake soil with probably some leaves. Best, of course, is oak beechwood. But Lucanus cervus is not living only in oak wood. That's not true. A lot of people think they are living only in oak wood. They are living in a lot of different deciduous trees, and also in culture like for cherry trees or apples or whatever. You can find them. Number. Next video 24, also a row of nice males from Frankfurt and from Switzerland here, the other types, and it's a very nice hobby to care for beetles. It doesn't need a lot of space to keep them. You don't have to care for them every day. Most is an advantage if you leave them in the box alone and do not check them and trouble them too often, so they will grow very well and very nice. Also, if you are in the holidays for 2 weeks, that's absolutely no problem with beetles. 4 males here from our own production during the research project. They are all very beautifully formed, and also this is a very nice big male pterodont with big reddish shining mandibles. So this is around 7 centimeters or probably 8. Beautiful European stag beetle Lucanus cervus. As I said, it's a protected species. Officially it's not allowed to take them from nature, also not if you want to just rear them and breed them, and that's a thing that we have to think over, because how do you want to teach our children loving your nature if you're not allowed to care for them and to see how you can breed them and what kind of habitat they like. So all this practical stuff was forbidden in the last 30 years under environmental protection, but it's in fact not a protection of the environment, because if the people have no contact to the environment, how do you want to protect it? You have to have a didactic, educational way to allow people to contact and to be in contact with the living things in nature so that you can really have a fundament for environmental protection. If you just make if you just say it's forbidden to enter here to this little pond, it's forbidden to do this and this and that, that's not environmental protection. It's the same with the protection of our rainforests. Rainforests have always been habitats, not only for beetles or animals, but also for humans. So you cannot exclude humans from a rainforest. So that's one of the stupid ideas sometimes that also environmentalists have. They think that you can protect the forest by sending all the human populations outside. The clans that lived there for 10,000 years and cared very well for this forest, they should go somewhere else. So why? Because they were living there very nicely and sustainably for a very, very long time already. So we have to learn about collaboration in the same habitat. And the forest, where also the stag beetles live, they have been very, very long time in the history of the man a habitat of humans. So if you think back to the old generations from the Celts for 2,000 years ago, before the Romans, the natural societies in Europe, the Germans, they have all been living more or less in the forests. So that's also why the stag beetle was one of the very famous beetle, and it was given in contact with the god Thor from the highest god of the Celts. So that's it's a very important animal in mythology of the North, is the stag beetle. And in a way, I think it could be that it survived this mythology to today, and probably we start up with another mythology about the role of these beautiful stag beetles. When we have enough people who love them and rear them and keep them at home and tell the stories about these nice experiences that they made with rearing beetles. That's one of the most beautiful females that we had in our production here. It was a little bit over 5 centimeters long. That's really big for a Lucanus cervus female. And you know, this is one of the videos made in the new studios where I checked for new males. That's probably a smaller one from Bershis. I'm not so sure. I cannot read the label. And this is another one. You see, I kept most of the larvae in these 500 milliliter boxes. This one entered the plastic lid with the mandibles. So sometimes they are very, very hard, the mandibles. Yes, they have to, because they are the weapons for the fight between the males. When they meet on a twig where there is also a female, they fight until one is thrown down the twig to the earth and the other one can mate. Now that's the beautiful stag beetle here in 500 milliliter box. That's enough. You don't need more. If you keep other animals, you have to have big, a lot of space for them, but with 500 milliliters you can rear beautiful, nice stag beetles. And what we can, this is a row of females, different size. It's not that the females that are big have eaten, have had better substrate feed material. Sometimes, so in the same feed materials you find bigger ones and smaller ones. You find from the same population individuals that develop fast in 1 year, and of course they then a little bit smaller, or you find individuals that take 2 years for the development or a little bit bigger. It does not depend on the food that you give them. That's also one of the faults written in the book and repeated over and over again. If it's written here, if they have not enough feed, they will become small, the form capreolus. That's not true. The form capreolus can be produced also in very good substrate, but it depends on the genetics of the individual, whether it stays only 1 year, 2 years, or it develops fast or not. So that's another. Also, I think that's a strategy of nature also, that not everybody emerges at the same time, so, but there's different windows of emergence within one single population. So that you see here some different sized females from our collection. And now we prepared a new egg-laying boxes. I mostly remove the bark from the white rotten wood pieces before I put them into the egg-laying box, because that helps the female find a white rotten piece where it can oviposit on the border between the wood and the soil. Here's a nice male. Why don't they fly away? Because it's too cool now outside, and the males and females, they fly only if the temperature is around 25 degrees and humidity is around 100%, mostly in the late evening, in the first hot summer nights when it was raining before. That's the moment I found a lot of stag beetles flying around. So now video 27 is in fact the reintroduction of the stag beetles that we produced in the laboratory into nature. That's one of the beautiful stag beetles from Bergis, Switzerland, and I just reintroduced them where I have taken the parents of them. So that's a reintroduction of the same genetics. And we will make projects for the reintroduction of stag beetles with our Stag Beetle Association in Switzerland. If you're interested, you can contact us. We have the knowledge to do that. And we have to say that a lot of these projects for reintroduction of stag beetles are made completely wrong, because people do not know the life cycle of the insect, and think if you just put a pile of white rotten wood somewhere in the forest, the stag beetles will somehow find this pile and lay their egg and start having a population there. That's not true. Never. They will come to a pile of white rotten wood that you put in your forest. If not, there is already a good habitat in the maximum of 2 kilometers away from that place, because that's the maximum radius of dispersal of a stag beetle from their own place where they have been born. So if you put some white rotten wood blocks into your nice oak forest, and there is not a living habitat, breeding brood place in the vicinity of 2 kilometers maximum, never there will some stag beetles arrive there. And the best method to really reintroduce them is in the form of larvae in a place where they can develop and finish their development, and then they create their new habitat there. But that until now this was never made like this. I wonder why. That's just because nobody knows about the life cycle of the stag beetle in the scene of the people who have the money to finance that. So we in the citizen science scene, we beetle lovers, of course, we know about that. But mostly people in the government, they are not interested to cooperate with privates. They want to cooperate with academic institutions, but they don't have the experience. So that's the problem why it doesn't work mostly. So here it will work when we will have a lot of stag beetles along the lake of Wallensee in Switzerland, not only because I reintroduced them here, but they have been there ever since, and we have a lot of forests there where they can grow abundantly. Mostly you don't see them, but they are not really rare. As it said, the stag beetle is rare. It's not the stag beetle rare, but the habitats have been destroyed by our ways to manage the forest. So that's another interesting video, number 28, 7 months after egg laying. Look, they are all L3 stage already. Or L3 stage after 7 months, you know, that's half a year. And they are already big like that. So the development of the stag beetle is in fact very fast. It's not true that they take 5 to 8 years. And if you see them in a mass like that, I want to tell you something else. That was written in my last book, Sky Food. It's about edible insects, and in fact the stag beetle is one of the famous edible insects in Europe, or it was in the older times, as you can see here. And it's not only in the prehistoric times of the Celts and Germans that they were eaten in the form of the larvae, or by the Romans, where it also was historically documented that they ate the larvae of stag beetles. But there are also books, like the book here. It's a German cookbook with a recipe where it's written how you prepare a soup with stag beetles. That's true. So you can make the same thing with the stag beetles as you make with the June beetles also. So the stag beetle, effectively, it was an edible insect also in Europe, and it's not true that in Europe we have no history of edible insects, but it's a long time since the Roman period and the Christian period. And the Christians, they were always very let's say, they stigmatized eating of insects very much in their culture until now. That's also why we have this thinking that eating insects is something not clean or not good, or you shouldn't do that, or they are in contact with the devil, or whatever stupid idea you can have about natural beings. So that's video 28. They are 8 gram, average 8 gram after 7 months. Of course, they had a lot of content of their digestive tract, but it's an impressive development for an insect that you think they should take years to develop, because people think, why can't they be so big if they don't eat long time like we do? And that's the last video from this series. It's just to look a little bit to this nice big larvae and how they dig into a new substrate box that I have prepared for them. So I think I hope you enjoy some of these videos, and if you are interested to think about starting a new habitat of the stag beetles, that's possible. You can contact us and let's talk about it. And the most important thing is, of course, that originally in your area where you live and you want to install a new habitat for the stag beetles, the natural conditions are good for that already. So it makes no sense to introduce them on an island in the Maldives, because that's not a habitat for European stag beetles. Thanks for watching. Have a nice time. Enjoy life. Enjoy being outside. Enjoy being with your friends and with your loved animals.